we go. All right. Um, Making sure that I'm recording the right screen. Audio is on. Very good. Okay. All right. So first thing first, okay, sign in to Canvas either on the computer that is in front of you. Use your own device if you have your laptop or iPad or even cell phone. Yes. Oh, okay. I see. Okay. And you're prepared to take notes. Okay, unless you are one of the very seasoned, developer who just did not get a degree, and you just need a piece of paper showing that yes, I know what I'm doing. You probably need to take notes in this class. Okay, even though all the material is available to you for free. Okay, it's OER or Open Educational Resource. It is also recorded. Okay, I'm recording my lecture, but taking notes is very essential in the process of learning. And you can take notes using Google Doc, which is also free. You can use a student account, to take notes. You can use a piece of paper. You can use a tablet. You can also use your own computer. There are many, many ways to take notes and record your thoughts as you are, understanding the material in the lecture. Okay, but it is very essential that you take notes. All right. So, having said that, we are resuming to in the material that we have been talking about. So, one way for me, okay, this is not just for you, this is for me to remember where we were on the previous lecture, especially when it is what, 4 days, 5 days ago on last Wednesday. So, how do you think that I remember, what was the last thing that I talked about on last Wednesday? Nope, I did not, because it's kind of hard to be teaching a class and take notes at the same time. Yes, I have it recorded. Very good. So yes, go ahead, sorry. Yep. Yep, but I also went back to my own recording. So let me show you what I do typically before a class, not just this one, but every single class. I would go to the recording from the previous lecture and then just all the, kind of fast forward, all the way close to the end so that I can identify what was the last topic that I was talking about so I can connect today's lecture to last Wednesday's. Okay? So that's what I do, okay? And even I cannot remember exactly what I talked about in the previous lecture. So the chances of a student being able to remember everything without writing anything down is almost zero, okay? So that's why, taking notes is important, okay? Because we tend to forget stuff, okay? That's not what our brain is, what our brains is good at, remembering all the details, but we are good at thinking, okay? So that's what we'll be focusing on in terms of learning is, we want to understand the material. All right, so with that said, this is the lecture from last time, but I did a few things, over the weekend. I'm not sure whether this was available before the weekend, but I use ChatGPT to generate some questions according to the content of the class. You can do something similar to this, okay, if you want to. I can even give you the prompt to do that. Okay, I think it is going to be helpful, okay, because this will give you the opportunity to generate even more related questions so that you can try out and go like, okay, am I understanding the concepts? Let me try to answer those questions. Then you can compare your answer to the actual answer that is generated like this. Okay. So if you want more of these, I can generate even more questions. Okay. It's good for practice purposes. Okay, because generating questions is not something that I'm good at, okay? Because I cannot figure out what questions to ask, especially multiple choice. Because in order to make multiple choice questions, I have to think about what can possibly be misunderstood, and that's not something that is easy for me. But apparently, ChatGPT is actually quite good at misunderstanding something or figuring out how something can be misunderstood, and then it just present all those as choices. All right, so I'm just gonna rewind back to where we were last time, which is rule 5. This is where we stopped. So if you have not um, caught up with the reading, this might be a little bit challenging, okay, because all these concepts kind of stack up on each other. Yes, this is all on Canvas. Yes. So the way we accessed it on Canvas, let me switch to student view so you see how things should look like on your end. So the first thing, if you are new to this class, because for whatever reason, this is your first attendance of this class, first thing first is to read the syllabus, not right now, okay? But as soon as, the class is over and you have some free time, read the syllabus, okay? Because the syllabus talks about all the policies that I have regarding, all kinds of, scenarios, like what if I'm sick, okay? I'm going to be late for class, okay? What would happen? Or if I forget to do my homework and I'm really in a rush and I cannot turn it in on time, what is going to happen? Those are all stated in the syllabus, so it is important to read that first. um so, all the other links are also useful, but, from the perspective of how do we access the slide or the document that I am showing you right now, and oh, not this one, but this one over here. Let me close this one, which is not needed. So this is linked from here. Syntax and the syntax to describe syntax. Yes, there are three syntaxes in the same sentence, and that was intentional. Okay, so that's how you get to the reading material. You can download the material. It is just an HTML document. You can download it onto your own hard drive. You can print it out, put it onto a binder, or you can just access it the way it is. Okay, it is open sourced, or it is they call it Creative Commons. Okay, it is released under a Creative Commons license, which means it is free to you. Okay, you don't have to pay anything for this class. So if I have money, okay, since I don't have to buy a textbook, how much is a textbook these days? 50 bucks, depending on which class you're in, right? If you're in calculus, how much is the calculus textbook subscription for one semester? How much? 150. Okay, that's $150. Yes? Hmm? The computer is not working. Well, switch to another computer. There's another workstation. Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you for switching position. Thank you. All right. So that's good. Okay. Now we are addressing the question of how do we find the material. I am revamping all the material, and that's why you don't see a whole lot here because as I am working on the material, okay, I'm releasing those, just kind of gradually. But the release material is ahead of the lecture. Okay, in other words, variables, assignment statements, and sequences is already available. We might be able to get to a portion of that module today, depending on the pace of today's lecture. Okay, but once it is released, it is important to read ahead of the lecture. I will try my best to make it possible so that you guys can read ahead of the lecture. So do not wait until I talk about something and make that your first contact with the content. Okay, because unless you're very familiar with these concepts already, you're not gonna be able to absorb the content as I talk about the content. Reading ahead of time will really help you absorb the content more effectively. All right. So are there any additional questions? Yes, go ahead. Hmm. It is more or less just a self-assessment so that you can tell whether you are on track or not. So I would put it this way, if these questions cannot be answered or the answer your answer if your answer to these questions is not entirely correct, then you might need to have a better understanding of the material. But I cannot say whether it is going to be relevant to the exam or the assessment because I do not actually have the assessment. I don't even know how I'm going to ask questions in the assessment yet. Mhm. All right. But that's a very good question. It's a very fair question to ask, but I simply do not know how it is all going to work out yet. All right. Very good. So let's go back to the description of meta syntax. Okay, this is the syntax to describe syntax. In other words, what are the rules that are determining whether a statement or any kind of construct in a program is valid or not? Okay, it is very similar to grammatical rules that we have in just about any natural language. Okay, because structure is needed in order for any language to be understood by another person who speaks, the same language. So structure, this is basically describing the structure of a programming language, not these ones. This is just an example, but it is an example to illustrate, how to interpret the meta syntax itself. So I'm going to quickly reiterate something that we have talked about before. When you see something that is in italic and usually in a little gray box, it is called a token. Okay. If you see something that is not in italic and in a gray box, instead it is in boldface, it is called a terminal. The difference between the two is a terminal is something that you need to include in the program code itself verbatim. In this case, it means you literally have to spell the word and as it is. Okay, you cannot use change the case. It is case sensitive. You cannot change it to another word that has about the same meaning. It has to be exactly and itself. Okay, that's what a terminal is. A token, which is something that is gray and typically italic, is a placeholder. Okay, so you might ask, is holding a space for what? Well, it depends on the rule. Okay, so in this case, what is okay, let me pick something that's easier. So I'm picking friend as a token. So you now ask, okay, friend is a token, it is a placeholder, but it's holding the place for what? So now you have to go to the other rules. There are three rules that specifies what friend as a placeholder can be the holding the place for. So friend can be holding the place for Ali. Friend can be holding a place for John. It can also be holding a place for Chang, spelled exactly in those particular rules. So rules 1, 2, and 3 are called alternatives to expand the token friend, singular friend. Is that okay so far? All right. Say that one more time, please. So that has to be spelled or typed exactly as verbatim in the code itself. Yes. And then the token is it is a placeholder that can be expanded to can potentially be a lot of things, can also be nothing. Yep. All right. So when you go to the quiz or the kind of short questions at the end of the module, the notation is a little bit different. I just want to describe it a little bit so that when you are reading the questions, you know what to do with it. So in the question, generated by AI, the way a token is designated is it starts with an asterisk, it ends with an asterisk. So it is enclosed by two asterisks. That is a token. Terminals, on the other hand, are double quoted. So when you see something double quoted, it is a token, it is a terminal. If you see something being enclosed by two asterisk symbols, it is a token. Is that okay? So there are many alternatives. Okay, the way that I do it, in my own document is more visual. Okay, so you can actually see, oh, there's a gray box and it's italic. It's easier to tell. But in terms of something that's computer generated, it is much easier to type something like this as opposed to the way that I format mine. Yes, terminal in this format are enclosed by double quotes. Yep. But in my format, it is simply bold-faced and not enclosed by any symbol. So there are different ways to express, BNF in this case. All right. Yep. What is what is a syntactic rule in BNF? Well, that's a question that for you to answer based on the material that we have learned. And the answer is actually here. So you can actually click on the symbol here and it would expand so that you can actually see the answer. Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So are there any additional questions before we continue the discussion? Because this Rule 5 was where we basically ended in the previous lecture on last Wednesday. So we all good here? Okay, if you need more time to think about do I have a question? Yes, go ahead, please. B and F in what respect? I about a question? Okay. So what you see as boldface here is a terminal. And then when you see in the question anything that is double quoted, it is also a terminal. If you see something here that is enclosed in double asterisk, it is a token. But when you look at my rules, anything that is italic in a gray box is also a token. So there are two different ways to visualize what is a token versus what is a terminal. In different people just use different format. I chose its format because it's more visual. It is visually more obvious. Okay. The other way requires you to say, okay, what is this thing enclosed in? Is it enclosed by double quotes or is it enclosed by asterisks? Which to me is less visual, but both ways. There are many other formats too, to express BNF. So the key question that you need to ask is, what is representing a token and what is representing a terminal. Okay. And in an expansion, this colon colon equals to is representing expands to or can expand to, which means the left-hand side of this symbol is always going to be a token because you never expand a terminal. So that will give you an idea of, oh, okay, so that's how a token should look like, or this is the format that we use to designate something as a token. Yeah, some other formats would use angle brackets around tokens, and there are just many ways to kind of visually tell differentiate between what is a token versus what is a terminal. So are we good with that? Okay, excellent. So I know this stuff is a little bit beyond what you would expect from a beginning or a introduction to programming class, but I choose to introduce all of these topics as early as like week 1 because you're gonna need that in order to understand what is the correct syntax in any programming language anyway. So we might as well just get some exposure to this type of way to kind of so that we can understand, okay, what is the structure, of a program, so that later on when we need to talk about some additional constructs and whatnot, now we have the proper way to express that structure. Are we okay so far? All right, excellent. So after R5, okay, these are all working, okay, but sometimes this is not the most concise way to do something. In other words, yes, functionally they are sufficient, but two, it is very verbose, okay, which means it takes up a lot of space, especially when we have a lot of alternatives. This just takes up a lot of lines. So what we are doing, in these two rules over here is we are simply using a more concise way to describe exactly the same thing. So let me just highlight here what we are talking about now, and then we'll go back and describe how this is really the same thing as what we have before from Rule 1 to Rule 5, except they are much more concise at this point. So the only difference is I'm introducing the symbol, the vertical bar here. So let me show you which vertical bar we're talking about. I'm trying to highlight just the vertical bar, that vertical bar. So the vertical bar is a part of the meta syntax. It is not a terminal. In other words, you do not type that vertical bar in the actual program. It is not a token either. It does not expand to something. It is here as a separator. So what we are trying to say here is friend as a token expands to Ali or John or Chang. In other words, the vertical bar is just here to separate the alternatives that a particular token on the left hand side of the colon colon equal can expand to. So this way, rule 1, 2, and 3, they're all combined to one single line. It is only for conciseness. It doesn't really change the rules. It's just that, oh, okay, instead of using three lines, three separate rules to express this, now we have one single rule to express exactly the same thing. Do we have any questions about how friend is expanding to Ali, John, or Chan? Just like before, except the rule itself is more concise and easier to read, at least from my perspective. So we're good on that one? Okay, very good. So the second line is about the same thing. Okay, so friends as a token, it can expand to just friend by itself, or, okay, remember the vertical bar means or it can also expand to the sequence over here. This sequence is exactly the same as the sequence on the right hand side of rule 5. Um, it's just the vertical bar says, oh, okay, this is another alternative that friends in plural can expand to. Are we doing okay so far with that? Okay, say again. Can there certain tokens may have alternatives, but not, we don't know exactly, some, yeah. So some tokens may have alternatives. So now that we have these rules, okay, we have a sentence, or we have a sequence of, things to parse. So this is I wouldn't call that a sentence because an English professor would say it's missing the verb and also missing the um, object, right? Because in order to have a sentence, you need those. So I would call that a phrase, okay? But I want to see if this phrase is consistent with the rules that we have specified. Okay. In other words, can this be recognized? Okay, the highlighted portion. Let me scroll over a little bit. Can the highlighted portion be recognized as a particular token, a single particular token, using the rules that we have specified? Okay. You go like, we don't have anything that can handle two ands and then three names. Okay, we simply do not have any rules that is specifically that can deal with that. Yes, yes, that is correct. Yep. So, because my mic doesn't pick up, your voice, so let me just kind of repeat that. So I think the key that you're trying to, tell us is it can be structural. A folder can contain another folder. In other words, a container can contain another container. A friend or friends can contain another quote unquote friends. So if you think about friends as a folder, it means a friends, which is a folder, can contain a file. A file can be either Ali, John, or Chang. Okay, but a folder, which is friends, can also contain another folder called friends, and that one can contain another folder which is also friends, and so on. Okay, so we are already used to the concept of a container being nested inside another container. Okay, because how do you organize your photos? I know you guys all take photos with your cell phones, but do you organize it in bigger units, or you just have one gigantic global list of all the photos that you have taken over all the years? Is that the case? Okay, but some people organize their pictures into albums, right? And unfortunately, in Google Photos, you cannot have an album inside an album. It's only one level. But when it comes to files on your computer, You can have a folder inside the folder. Okay, when you're doing your homework assignment, okay, for at ARC, okay, so you might have one folder for each semester, and then under the semester, you have one folder for each class that you're taking. And depending on the complexity of your homework assignment, you even have a folder for each assignment under the same class. Okay, so now you have an organized way of saying, okay, this contains this contains this, and so on. Okay. Another way to look at containment or nesting is look at a tree. Okay. If you look at a tree, every tree starts with a single trunk coming out of the soil. Okay. And then what does it do? Well, it has branches, right? So it has main branches, and then you follow the branches, and the main branch branches out into smaller branches. You follow each one of those smaller branches, it branches into even smaller branches, and so on until at the very end you end up at a leaf. Okay, very good. So that is the same way that we can look at something like this is can we organize this into basically a tree so that every branch along in that tree we are only using the syntactic rule. What syntactic rules are we talking about? Friend can expand to Ali, John, or Chang, and then friends can expand to either just friend or it can expand to friends and friend. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recognize patterns. Okay, that's the whole point of the syntactic rule is to specify the rules so that we can use those rules and then we can try to recognize things. So you can read. Okay, so this part is important because I just want to say, if you have read this portion here, then you would have understood, the process itself. Now, is this, kind of dry and boring? Yes, it is. Okay. For the most part, computer science is like this. Okay. If this is the kind of stuff that you enjoy doing, it's not going to be that kind of dry and boring. You just go like, oh, this is kind of cool. We can now recognize everything that is, you know, originally in a sequence. Okay. This is called a sequence of words. Okay, and we can now give it a structure. We can go like, oh, okay, we can restructure this entire thing into a single token friends. Okay, so the question is, how do we do that? Go ahead. Question. Oh, okay, all right, cool. So anytime you want me to pause and ask a question or just have some time so that you can reflect and try to understand the material, you can just go ahead and let me know. Okay. All right. So instead of doing this, okay, I am going to do it in a kind of more graphical way. So let me just copy the sentence first into my tablet, and then we'll use the tablet to kind of go about doing this. So I'm just going to write down the exact phrase, which is John and Ali and Chang. Okay. And I'm switching to the tablet view like this. Now I ask, okay, these are all quote unquote terminals. In other words, this is the phrase that I'm given with, consisting of exactly these words, John and Ali and Chang. But I want to see how I can apply the rules, the syntactic rules, so that the entire thing boils down to, a single token. Okay, that's what I want to do. So when I see John, I don't really have a whole lot of option. John is just going to be recognized as a friend. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here because this is an important step. John is what we're given in text, but I can recognize it based on the rules that we have talked about into a token friend. Is that okay? So just to make this a little bit more clear, I'm going to use angle brackets to emphasize the friend is a token. Is that okay? So this is yet another way to designate something as, oh, this is just a token. Okay, we're good. Okay, so then the computer goes like, oh, friend can also be recognized as friends. Okay, okay, fine. Okay, so we'll go like this also goes to friends because friends can expand to just one single friend without the rest. Okay, But at this point, we kind of stuck, okay? Because now we go like, uh, are there any other rules that we can expand? The answer is no, not really. Okay, fine. Okay. So then we go to the next word, which is and. So now we ask, can and by itself be recognized as a token? Nope. There's no token that can expand to just the word and. So we go like, okay, fine. Okay, so I'm going to use an underline here to say this is not processed. We have read the word and, but we don't know what to do with it. Okay, not yet. Okay, so we go like, okay, let's keep reading. Now we read the word alley, and then we look at the word alley, and we go like, can we do something about alley as a word? The answer is yeah, we can do something about it. It can be recognized as friend. Okay, so now your alley is recognized as the token friend, singular. Okay, so what do we have at this point? Now we have the token friends, we have the terminal and then we have another token friend. Okay, this is a very important moment. Okay, because this is so now we have a sequence. Okay, we have a sequence of tokens and terminals. Friends as a token and as a terminal, and friend as a token as a sequence. Is that okay? Does that match the right-hand side of one of the rules that we have talked about? It does. Okay, so now we can, you know, basically recognize these three as a whole into one single thing. So let me see if I can, do something kind of more interesting here. So I'm just looking at all the options that I have, and I don't even know whether colors would even show up here. So it is orange. Okay, let me see. Nope, does not appear orange to me. I don't know why color is not showing up. I know the gray stuff is going to show up. So that's maybe what I need. Okay, so I'm going to put it in a gray format here. So I'm just going to circle these three things like so. And where did that go? Nope. Okay, let me do it one more time. Okay, this time it stays. Good, very good. Okay, so now we have this sequence here, and this entire sequence can be recognized as which token? Friends, okay? Uh-huh. Okay, so we go like, oh, great. We can have, we just created one more folder and goes like, okay, it will contain these three things. So let me switch back to a color here, and it is friends. So this goes to friends. Say again? Mm-hmm. That is correct. So John and Ali is now recognized as a single token of friends. Yep. So once again, you can look at friends as a type of folder. So now we have two friends folder, right? Because we have one here and we have another one here. So basically we have a folder that has another folder and has a file under that. Okay. All right. Are we still doing okay so far? Okay, so we have done everything that we can, with all the words that we have encountered so far. The next word that we are encountering is and then we look at all the rules and go like, can we do something about this and? The answer is no, there's nothing we can really do about this and, not yet, okay? And then finally, we read the word Chang, and then we go like, wait, I can do something about Chang. Chang is recognized as a token friend. Now, can this friend be also be recognized as friends? The answer is yes, okay? But it's not useful to us, okay? Because now what do we have? We have friends, this one here at the top. We have the word and, which I don't know what to do with it yet. And then we have friend as a token again. So once again, we have that sequence, which is friends, the word and then friend again. We go like, oh, we can apply rule five again. Okay, if you look up in the rule five, that's how we can take these three as a sequence and go like, oh, the whole thing can now be recognized as yet another friend's token. So once again, I'm going to use a gray color, okay, to designate which part we are talking about here. Okay, this whole thing, which is consisting of three items, right? Because we have friends as a token, we have and as a word, as a terminal, and friend again as a token. Those three things is what we need in order to apply rule five. It can now be, recognized as friends as a single token friends again. So now we just basically write create another friends as a token, and we are done. So does that look like a tree to you? It's just upside down. It's just upside down, but it is a tree. Okay, what are the leaves of this tree? The leaves of this tree are the actual words that serves as the input into this mechanism. Are we doing okay so far? Yep. All right. So the concept of a tree as a way to organize things is actually very, very important in computer science as a whole. Okay, so by introducing that concept, okay, which is basically just a way of looking at things as early as this class, which is CISP 300, which is before the first actual programming class, which is CISP 360, I think is a good way to get those concepts introduced as early as possible, so that when you're taking your other classes, even if the professor does not tell you, look at this as a tree, you have that tool under your belt. You already say, oh, okay, I can see things as a tree. Are we doing okay so far with this diagram? Okay. All right. Yes, go ahead. Yes. Yes. hmm Um, have you guys ever looked at how natural language syntax is described? Let me just show you something here. Okay, this is the first time I do here, so it might take me like one or two tries to get to the right page. So I'm gonna be looking at grammatical rules for English as a, well, it's a graph. Okay. So let me see if no, that is, let's look for images. I think it's pretty safe in this case to look at images. Uh, nope, none of these is what I want. Okay, sort of. But you can kind of see that they're kind of trees too. Like she seems happier, and then after break up. Okay. All right, so maybe that wasn't a good idea to show parts of speech. Mm, well, maybe not parts of speech, but this tree does not actually show the ordering of the items. Okay, so maybe that was not a good idea. Hmm? Yeah, but that's sometimes what I do. I throw something at the wall, and if it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. But if it sticks, I go like, oh, okay, that works. Cool. All right. So that, go ahead, and then you. Yep. Say that one more time, please. Uh huh. Yes. So I can switch over. Yep. Oh, same thing? Okay, that is cool. See, that is a good example of why people should ask questions in a class. Because when you have a question or when you say, okay, I would like to see that again, chances are many other people also want to do that. Now, in this case, we only have two people who raised their hand, but I'll bet you that many of you who did not raise your hand are thinking about the same thing. I want to look at that picture again. Now, if this is working out for you, it's basically the same thing as what the other picture is about. What I can do is this. I would even take a picture of this and save it to a file. Okay, so let me save it to the temp folder. How should I call this? Hand drawn tree. Okay, PNG. It is now saved. And what I'll do is I am going to wait. I just missed it that way. Nope. So I can show you what I can do, because this material is OER, Open Educational Resource, and I'm also using GitHub to organize all this material. This is going to be a little bit of a fancy thing, but I will show you what I can do with this. Okay, so I'm going to open a new tab here so I don't lose track of the other one. This is the source document for the entire thing. In other words, this is how I type this material. So what I can do now is at the very end here, okay, right below the diagram that I have already created, I'll create a link here. So I'm going to say this is the hand-drawn tree of the same syntax parsing, parsing, and then put a link to that file, which is hand-drawn tree.png, and submit changes. But I also need to upload the file. So there's one more step I need to do. I go here and then I just create a new file. Oh, nope, 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 not like that. I need to upload the file, not to create a file. So cancel changes and then go to add file by uploading the file that I have just captured earlier, which is in the temp folder hand drawn tree.png. And do I need to do something here? Just commit the changes. Da, 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 da. Okay, cool. So now I can close this window. It would take about a minute, okay, because every time I make any changes to the system, it's going to go through all the files and kind of rebake the whole thing. So it takes about a minute to quote unquote do the baking. So after a minute, it's going to, if I refresh, it will show up here. So that's kind of why OER is kind of cool. Is because hey, I can actually take notes for you and then put it onto the document. Yes, go ahead. Uh-huh. Yeah. You want me to switch back to the tree? Yes. Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you are asking about this one here, right? This one? Because friends expand to friend. No, it goes only one way. So when we look at the rule, we are looking at it from the top down, what looks like top down in this case. But when we are performing what we call the parsing, we're actually doing it in a bottom up fashion. Is that okay? Because what the rule, okay, I can put it on the side. So what the rule says is friends expands to friend or friends and friend. Oops. Okay. So now it's harder to see which one is a token. So by handwriting, it is easier for me to put angle brackets around the tokens, and then everything that is not um, in angle bracket is a terminal. So that's the rule, right? So we can see when we go from left to right on the rule, we are basically going from top to bottom in the tree representation. But that's a good way to look at it. Okay, from the organization perspective, it is called a top-down view. But the other way to look at this is the bottom-up view, which is to look at the right-hand side of a rule and go like, okay, do we recognize any one of these? Yes. And then we go the opposite way. We go from right to left. That is how we go, in the tree from bottom to up. Is that okay? Yep. hmm Very good. So now we go back to the notes and see whether the baking is done. It should be, unless I make some stupid mistake, which I do sometimes. So now the notes actually contain the hand-drawn tree, which contains a little bit more information compared to the graph that is kind of nice, good looking because it's kind of computer drawn. But this one is, I mean, it's okay. And I forgot to use angle bracket, on the top friends here. So, just kind of keep that in mind. I forgot, that's just me forgetting to do it. In other words, over here, this should have angle brackets because that's also a token, not a terminal. Token. Yep. All right. So are we getting a good understanding of how BNF works? Okay. Now, is it a simple concept? I would say it's not exactly simple, but once you think of this as a container or folder containing a folder or a tree that has multiple branches, because the whole idea is we want to see if the text that is given to you is syntactically or structurally correct. Okay, because if something is not structurally correct, the computer cannot understand it. And if the computer doesn't understand it, it cannot do what you want the computer to do. So, most of the time it's just a very simple mistake somewhere, like a semicolon, missing a semicolon, or missing a close parenthesis, or something like that. Something that would not bother a human being. But the computer is very strict in terms of wanting to exactly find a pattern exactly the way it's described. So that's why, when something to us is like, oh, we're just missing a comma here. What is the big deal? It's not a big deal to us, but to the computer trying to understand the instruction that you're trying to give the computer, it is a big deal. It's a deal breaker. Okay, the computer simply cannot proceed any further. All right. So let me take a look at the time. It's 9:48. I think it's a good time to take a very short break by taking roll. Okay. So for those of you who were here on last Wednesday, you kind of know how I take roll. It's very simple. So let me get out of the student view so I can expose the roll taking activity, which is right here. Okay. And of course, here I have to show you what is the word that you need to enter. Okay, the word that you need to enter is variable. Okay, so you should have access to it, except I didn't reset the time, so you can't really do it. That's my bad. Let me go change the time. Give me a second here because I did not update the time to today or date. So that's all done. Click save. There we go. So if you refresh your page, you should be able to see it now. And let me go back to student view so I can show you what to do if this is the first time you do it. So go to control structure as a module, go to the very last item, which is roll on 2025, January 27th. Go there, it will ask you, click, take the quiz, type variable, Variable. I'll write it on the whiteboard just in case. So it's variable, okay? And then just type submit, And there's nothing you need to do. You just have to click submit quiz right away. Okay, which means you're going to get a score of 0, which is fine. Okay, this part is never going to be a part of your actual score to determine your grade. This is just me, taking attendance basically. All right. So do we have any problem, any questions about this part before we proceed? Okay, I don't see any questions. Okay. So we'll go ahead and continue with the lecture. So we are, yes. Hmm? It is a homework assignment, so it is now assigned. Okay. Well, it was kind of assigned last week, but then I said, well, we didn't have quite all the material that you need to understand, to get started with the homework assignment, but it is now we do. Okay. So let me kind of go back to what you were referring to. There's a BNF assignment. It looks like a quiz, but it's not exactly a quiz, okay? Because okay, I'll click on it so that you can see what it looks like when you click on it. So um, it is due on Wednesday at 9 a.m., which is when the class starts, okay? So you got about 2 days to do it, okay? There are 10 points, in this particular assignment or activity. There are 10 questions, so 1 point per question. It had been available since last Wednesday. I did not, stop it from because some people have gotten started with it already, so I couldn't quite, get out of that one. There's no time limit unless it goes all the way to the due date. So that means you have entire 2 days. Once you open it up and you have access to the questions, you have basically 2 days minus an hour or so to really kind of think about those questions and determine how to answer those questions. All right. And you are allowed 2 attempts. Okay, so you're allowed 2 attempts. The average of the 2 attempts will be the actual score of this activity. Now, some people may ask, but what if I get a full point, like full score after only 1 attempt? Well, guess what? That'll be your score. Okay, you don't need a second attempt in that case. All right, but you only get up to 2 attempts. Okay, so don't squander your attempts away. Um, and there are some other questions that are implied and some people are thinking about, but they don't may not want to ask. Okay, for instance, can I use AI to answer these questions? Well, exactly. Okay. So one, I cannot tell whether you're using AI or not. Okay. Two, using AI to really actually answer the question is not going to be helpful in your long-term goal of becoming a computer science person, computer scientist or software engineer, anyway, getting hired. Okay. Um, but you can still use AI to interpret the material. Okay, so this is also something that I would demonstrate just so that you guys get an idea of, okay, so this is a productive use of using AI, and this one is not so productive. Yes, go ahead. Yes. Yep. So this entire assignment is based on the material that we have talked about here, which is the module that we were on just today. We were just finishing up what we started on last Wednesday. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So yes. Okay. How do we make use of AI in a productive way? So if you do not have an account with ChatGPT, you can sign up, and you don't have to go for a paid account. But this is something you can do. Okay. You go to my module. Okay, right here. And you might want to sign up for a GitHub account. Okay, I think it's going to be useful in the long run anyway. So because if you sign up for a GitHub account and you click on improve this page by contributing and editing, so I'm just kind of opening a new tab here, you get to the source code of the entire thing. So right here, I just do a Control A for select all, Control C for copy, go back to ChatGPT and I will, kind of hint what I'm about to paste. So I can say, here, okay, the following is the learning material that introduces how to read BNF. And trust me, ChatGPT knows what BNF is already, so it knows what it is. I will be asking some questions in the following prompts. Okay, and then use Control Shift Enter so that you can separate the paragraph, and then Control V to paste the entire thing in. And then you just, well, that, and also you can ask for clarifications. Yeah, so you can, if you have any questions like what exactly is a token, or what differentiates a token from a terminal, for instance, you can ask the questions now. Okay, so now you can ask, you know, can you help me understand the differences between a token and a terminal? Oh, okay, that should have been a question mark, but it's good enough. So a terminal is a token, also called a non-terminal, is a placeholder or a symbol that can be expanded to other tokens. It represents a concept or structure rather than a fixed string. Tokens are italicized in BNF, and then terminal is a literal string or symbol that must appear verbatim in the input or output. They're bold-faced, which is, it picked it up from my actual description. Okay, so there we go. So in this case, obviously the formatting does not show up that well because it's in Markdown, so it doesn't show as what it should look like. Okay. So if you don't like Markdown as an output, you can also specify use HTML or something that does not that other than the Markdown. So it gives you something a little bit more than what the class is talking about. But it is a way for you to interact with the material. Is that okay? All right. Or you can ask, how do I read a BNF rule? What does colon colon equal means? So that's a bad question because there are actually two questions embedded into one, but we'll see. So there you go. It talks about the general format, what is on one side and what is on the other side, and and colon colon equals to, it means it's defined as or can expand to, but it's using a word that I have not used. It's called a meta symbol. So you can now ask further, what is a meta symbol and so on. But you can also see how it is shifting the format. It's using the angle bracket to denote tokens, and it's using basically boldface to indicate the terminals. So within ChatGPT, sometimes it is not consistent in terms of what notation it would use. So you just kind of have to be flexible and go like, oh, okay, sometimes it uses this way to designate a token, and sometimes it uses another way to designate a token. Yep. Uh-huh. hmm Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, just be a little bit flexible. The only thing is we need to know which side is what is a token versus what is a terminal. hmm All right, cool. Are we doing okay so far? All righty. So now we're going to move on to the concept of variables, assignment statements, and sequences. So that's on this module here. I made an announcement over the weekend that this module, as soon as it was available, I made the announcement. So I think I have it already open here on one of the tabs. There we go. All right. So typically, okay, if I remember to do so, every module has a list of prerequisites, which means It is telling you what else you should have read first before this module. Okay. So even for people who are just jumping right into a particular module, they go like, oh, okay, I probably should read and understand those prerequisites first before I start reading this. So this module starts with a task that is probably really outdated by now, okay? But I'm just going to use it anyway because many of you know of your parents or even your grandparents doing this. When they get a statement, when they get a credit card bill, okay? Yes, people used to get credit card bill by mail, like in an envelope, and then there's paper inside the envelope, okay? You just ask your parents or your grandparents about those days for some of you, because you guys are going, well, but everything is on my app now. Okay, I don't touch paper. I don't touch paper at all. Okay, well, back in those days, we do touch paper. So you read a credit card bill. So instead of just clicking a button and go like pay minimum amount, okay, which is always a bad idea, because if you pay the minimum with your credit card bill, what happens to the rest of the balance? Interest, okay? And how much interest are we talking about with a typical credit card? 20% ish, right? Is that a lot of money? It is a lot of money. That's why credit card companies cannot wait to give young people a chance to say, apply for our credit cards, okay? And that's also why, when they want to compete for customers, what do? Oh, you can roll over your balance from that credit card to the new credit card so that what you owe the other company, now you owe that to us. So we get to collect the interest instead of that other company. Okay. So anyway, so you get your credit card, there's a certain amount. Okay. So let's say the credit card is, I think $70 or something like that here. So back in those times, people write checks as well. Okay, that's the only way they pay anything is to write a check, put it inside the embedded envelope, and then send it back to the credit card company. Okay, so you write a check of X amount to the credit card company. And back in those times, there's no banking apps either. So how do you know how much money you still have in your banking account? You need a checkbook, okay? It's actually physical. The checkbook itself actually has a way to keep track of all of this. So you have to subtract the same amount from your available funds. In other words, you have to manually keep track of how much money do I still have in my banking account. Okay. And for some people, they would like to kind of analyze at the end of the year how much money they have spent on each credit card. So you're going to add the same amount to the total expense of that particular credit card. Because if you have several credit cards, you kind of want to know how much do I spend through this credit card? How much of a rebate check am I supposed to get at the end of the year? And so on and so forth. Okay, so it's just for getting more information about your spending and also how much of a rebate check you should get at the end of the year. So are we understanding these four steps as much as they are really outdated? But do we understand what we need to do by hand? We good? All right. So we have just introduced the concept of a variable, okay? Because x in this case is a very clear variable. It is variable because how much your balance is not fixed, okay? So most people have a really big, balance in this month because they bought a lot of Christmas gifts, okay, decorations and whatnot. So their January bill is usually a little bit more than usual, okay? But it depends on the month. And that's why it is a variable. It is not always a fixed amount. But why do we need it to be X, okay? Or why do we need to give it a name? Well, because otherwise, how do you specify that amount in the second, the third, and the fourth bullet points? You can always say that amount, right? That's not very clear. Okay, no pun intended. Using this, that, and pronouns and so on is always, there's always a chance that you're referencing something. I mean, remember, language is used for communication. Okay, What you think is that, okay, may not be what the person who is listening to you would think of as that, okay? So in programming, okay, which is instruction, to the computer, we want to be as exact as possible. So we cannot use, that, okay, that kind of word. Now, in later classes in CISP 400, you will get to see that, what Tech said was not entirely right. Okay, we actually use the word this in object-oriented programming. Okay, but that is a very limited context in which the word this actually does make sense. Okay, but in most cases, we do not use words like this, that, what we just talked about. Okay, we designate with a particular name. So X is the name of this particular value. Okay, it is the balance on the credit card bill. Is that okay? So by using X as a name of that credit card bill amount, I can refer to the same name in the following three steps without any confusion, any potential of a confusion of, are we really talking about the same amount here? It would be very clear. Is that okay? That is the whole concept of why we have variables in programming. So the next chapter or next section. And by the way, if you ever need to have a hyperlink to just a section in these notes here, you can do that by making hovering your mouse over, make sure that there's a little link symbol here. Then you can right click and copy the link here. That will copy the link not only based on the URL, but also it will bring you to a specific section itself. So this can be useful if later on we have really long and tedious modules, then you go like, okay, in my notes, okay, that is typed, okay, I just need a reference back to the actual content in the module. Then you can just copy and paste the link. So now when you're reading your own stuff and you need to reference back to the original content in my notes, it will go right straight to that section, okay, which can be handy. Okay, just a little minor thing. All right, so a variable has typically three things associated with it. A variable has a name because that's the whole point. Okay, the name is also called an identifier in C and C++ programming because that's the job of the name is to say, okay, this helps to differentiate one variable from another variable. Okay, so the name has to be unique within the context of the code. A variable also has a type. In other words, what kind of value are we going to store in this variable? Now, this part here is applicable only to what we call strongly typed programming languages. C, C++, Java are all called strongly typed programming languages, which means every time you work with a variable, there's always a type associated with it. So let me just kind of talk about two main types, okay, which to you it may not make sense at all. One type is called an integer, the other type is called a real number. Okay, what is the difference? Well, an integer means whole numbers. So it can represent, you can store values like 5, 16, 36-ish, okay? -40, those are all integers. A real number, on the other hand, can handle decimal places. Okay, that's the easiest way to explain it, is it can handle decimal places. So the quantity, the constant of pi is a real number. Okay, um, your credit card balance is probably a real number because you might owe $60.37. Okay, so the 0.37 makes it not an integer anymore. Okay, so that's the type of a variable. But whether there is a type associated with a variable depends on the programming language. In C, C++, and Java, they are strongly typed, and every variable has a type in that case. Okay. In other programming languages like JavaScript, Python, um, those are the two main other scripting languages. They do not have types. Okay, so variables do not have a restriction as to what it can represent at any given time. The third one is the value, which is also known as the state of a variable, which is what value is being stored right now. Okay, so a variable is like a little slip of paper. It can only store one value at a time. So once you overwrite the value of a variable, the old value is gone forever. There's no way you can go like, wait, I didn't mean to erase it. What was the value again? Nope. Once you overwrite the value of a variable, the other value is gone forever. So at any given time, a variable only has one value. Is that okay? All right. So the analogy here that I use is it's you can see it as a miniature whiteboard that has a name, or you can look at it as a little post-it that has a name. The name of the post-it or whiteboard distinguishes one whiteboard or post-it from another one, so you know which one is containing what value. Okay, the content of a whiteboard is its value. So what is written on the whiteboard or the post-it is the value. All right, so in this example, how many variables do we have? Now, X is obvious, okay? That's the balance of the credit card statement, but we have other ones too. So available funds is another variable because it changes from time to time, okay? When you get your paycheck, it increases, okay? When you get a gift from somebody else, because Chinese or Lunar New Year is coming, so those of you, who who know people who practice Lunar New Year's thing, you get a red packet, okay, which has money in it, so your available funds whoop, goes up a little bit too. But then the next time you pay something, it goes down again. Okay, so available funds is a variable because it changes over time. This is also a good time to talk about what is camel casing or camel case. Camel casing is basically saying if we need to string several things into one single word, the way we do it is we use an uppercase every time we start a new word, and then everything else is lowercase. We start lowercase, but then we use uppercase in order to start a new word. Okay, as opposed to we use available underscore and then funds everything in lowercase. Now, in this class, I don't really care which way you use, okay, as long as it is clear to me which variable you're referencing, it's all fine, okay? So the question is, then why do we care about camel casing? I mean, what is the relevance in this case? In C, C++, and many other programming languages, the language itself does not have a restriction of how you should name things, okay? It's like, okay, so what is the whole point? Your employer may. In fact, if you work for big tech, your employer probably has a little rule book of how you should name things, when you should have a new line, and what things belong on the same line, and how you should have the comments, which are basically text to describe what the code is doing. They have rules for everything. Why do you think they have all these rules when the programming language itself does not even care? Exactly. Okay. So you're exactly right. It is to make it more consistent. Okay, so all the code written by different people use the same consistent formatting. So the next person who has to read somebody else's code will find it a little bit easier to look at the actual code and understand what is going on. Okay, so that's the reason why your companies, okay, your employer in the future is likely to have a book or at least several rules to specify and go like, okay, when you write code for us, we need you to follow these rules, and they are not a part of the programming language itself. It is just the organization wanting you to follow a particular way of formatting things and structuring things. All right. So we also have another variable here, which in this case, I'm assuming this is for American Express. So we're going to call it AE total expense. So there are a few variables that we need to track, and and as a result, we also have to name the variables. So do we have any questions about how the variables are named, or why do we have this particular variable? What is the purpose of this variable? No questions? All right. So now we go to the next segment here. And then what we do is I'm doing this in just a little bit of a reverse way. Okay. So in order to decrease available funds by the credit card statement balance, this is how we do it, okay? Which looks very confusing at first. So it says available funds equals to available funds minus the balance of your credit card statement. Okay? If you present this to a mathematician who has no programming background whatsoever, that math person is going to go like, it does not make sense at all unless x is 0. So why do you think the math person would say something like that? No. Okay, to a mathematician, what does this symbol mean? The same as, right? Okay, the same as. Available funds is the same as available funds minus a non-zero amount, okay? Unless you have nothing for that credit card statement, it doesn't make sense, okay? It is not equal to. So that's how a mathematician will look at the single equal symbol. But in programming, a single equal symbol does not mean equals to. It means get or is updated to. Okay. In other words, the way we look at this is we evaluate the right hand side of the equal, which is called an assignment operator. We evaluate the right hand side first. Okay. Whatever that amount or whatever that value turns out to be is used to update the variable that is specified on the left hand side of the single equal symbol. So that's how the single equal symbol means entirely different things from the mathematical perspective versus the programming perspective. So from the programming perspective, do not, okay, do not think of this as is equal to. It means is changed to. It is an action to update whatever is on the left-hand side of the single equal symbol. Okay? This is really important because just about every modern programming language uses a single equal symbol for assignment operation. It's called assignment operation, which once again evaluates the right hand side. Whatever that value turns out to be is used to update the variable that is specified on the left hand side of the single equal symbol. Okay, I cannot overemphasize the importance of this change of interpretation of something that seems to be really easy. So now we go to the syntax or the BNF description of an assignment. So an assignment, which is actually not a statement, but we'll get to that later, it can be expanded to a left-hand side, which is a token, a equals to, which is a terminal, and then a right-hand side, which is a token again. So that means the only thing that is absolutely needed in an assignment that is specified verbatim is the single equal symbol here. So now the question is, what is the left-hand side and what is the right-hand side? Well, for simplicity, this is what I'm going to do. The left-hand side can expand to a variable name. So var name is just an abbreviation of variable name. It means, okay, give me a variable to update. That's the left-hand side. Are we good so far? Okay. And then the right-hand side is an expression. What kind of expression are we talking about? 2 times 3 plus a variable, the whole thing divided by 10. Okay. Whatever you want. Okay. So it's just a mathematical or arithmetic expression. Are we good with that concept? And some of you are asking, so why don't you express expression as a BNF also? Because it's going to overcomplicate the content of this class like by a whole lot. Yes, go ahead. hmm hmm Yeah, you can have multiplication, which is the asterisk symbol because there's no actual multiplication symbol on the keyboard, and then division is the slash. Yep. So we will get into those situations, maybe at some point of this class, but right now we're just focusing on adding something and then subtracting something. Yep. But you can have any expression that seems to make sense to you. Hmm. All right. So now we look at var name and then we ask, what is a var name? A var name is an identifier. Okay. So the question is, why don't we put identifier over here? Why go through var name? Because there are function names, there are class names, and so on and so forth, and they're all identifiers. So instead of putting identifier to a context where I'm expecting the name of a variable, I just make an intermediate token called a var name, variable name, so that it is clear to us that, oh, okay, this thing over here has to be the name of a variable. It has to be an identifier, but it has to be an identifier that is identifying a variable. Very good. Okay, so now this is where things are a little bit more complicated, right? And we are out of time already. So I'm going to stop right here, okay? Which means before Wednesday, right before the class, I am going to check out the video, scroll all the way to the end, just so that I can remember, oh, okay, this is where I left off in the previous lecture. Okay. And if you have been taking notes, you won't need that, but it's always a good idea to go like just quickly check, okay, this is where we left off last time. All right. So I will see you on Wednesday. Don't forget about the homework assignment. And if you come in late and you have not taken the row activity thing, you might need to talk to me. Yes. Let me turn off the recorder first. Otherwise, this is also going to be recorded, which may not be